Today we are discussing what I personally think is John Mayer's best tone era out of his entire career, and taking a listen to a handful of examples that I think just highlight how unique and incredible his tone was from this specific point. And if you know me well enough, you know that I'm going to be talking about the 2019 World Tour. Now, that opening of Belief was on October 10th of 2019, and I thought just kind of the perfect tone clip from this tour to highlight to start off this video. And before I get into kind of the reasoning and some explanation in terms of what's actually going on with these tone clips we're going to be listening to from the tour, I want to first kind of head off something I know that you guys will be typing in the comments probably already. If you haven't already, how can you say the 2019 World Tour is John's best tone era ever when there's the Continuum Tour, there's the Born and Raised in Paradise Valley tours, and those tones are basically the quintessential John Mayer sound? And I like to, kind of think of it as one of my favorite TV shows, Top Gear. Jeremy Clarkson's talking to Richard about the Focus ST versus the Up exclamation point, and they're like, listen, this is brilliant, but I like this. And that's how I feel about the the Born and Raised in Paradise Valley era and the Continuum eras. They're brilliant, and I completely understand why they are considered by the vast majority of Mayer fans to be the best tones he's ever had. But for me personally, I like the 2019 World Tour, and to maybe say that it's his best against Continuum or Born and Raised Paradise Valley is maybe not quite the right word for it, but it's just what I heavily prefer and I like better, even though I would concede if you're talking about the quintessential John Mayer tone, those are more of what you would be looking for.
Well, hang on, you've just...
No, I like it. This is brilliant, but I like this. Let me put it to you this way, Hammond.
And the 2019 World Tour, in my mind, was really special for a number of reasons. One of them just being the fact that John was touring, not backing any album. Sure, he released a couple of songs around this point, kind of in the break in between two as well. He had released Carry Me Away in between kind of touring legs of the 2019 World Tour. But mainly this was John just touring for the love of touring. So the set lists were really fun, and it kind of allowed him just to, all right, let's pick some songs I want to play on this tour and we'll do them. And the fact that the gear was really interesting for this tour as well, I think made it that much more special, of course, because we're talking about the guitar tone. And the thing for me that really sets apart the 2019 World Tour's guitar tone compared to every other tour we've ever heard John play on is the fact that it was higher gain, and the guitar solos in general were just bigger and better. They seem to just be a lot more raw and powerful when you listen to him play. And like that opening of Belief is a prime example of just how powerful his guitar tone sounds. If you compare it to like the opening of Belief from Where the Light Is, this one's got so much more gain, so much more power behind it. And I just think it sounds so awesome. And that's kind of why I love this tour so much, is because those higher gain solos I just think are so cool and more unique for John, but they're not higher gain in an unpleasant way. They're just a higher gain version of John's guitar tone, where he was utilizing mainly the third overdrive, which is a concept I've talked about a lot on the channel, to help achieve that sound. Now let's take another listen to Belief from Amsterdam. I think I said we would go back and re-listen to the Amsterdam performance, but no, that was the Forum performance of Belief, that intro solo that we were listening to, just to give you guys a bit of a different example of John doing the same thing more or less, but with different pedals and a bit of a different gain stacking combination at that point. But the opening of Belief really sets the tone for the entire show, pun not really intended. How John hits you with a really powerful, crazy solo to launch into Belief, and that literally kicks off the entire show. It kind of just from the get-go highlights how the 2019 World Tour is a bit different in terms of that guitar tone and what John was really going for in terms of his sound. Now, when I talk about the third overdrive being used, John, of course, uses lots of overdrive pedals to get his sound, the concept of gain stacking, things I've covered a lot on the channel. And the intention of this video is not to go too deep into the actual gear and all the, I could talk about this stuff for like an hour. But basically, during the 2019 World Tour, John utilized his main kind of core concept of pedals, Keeley Katana, TS10, Klon Centaur, to get his main tone for solos and everything. But during the 2019 World Tour, we saw John utilizing a third overdrive pedal, a lot more than he had ever had in his career up until that point, and really even since then, to help sculpt his tone. And that's where you get a lot of the higher gain, more sustain, more kind of fat saturation in terms of the lead sound. That's really where you're getting it from, either gain stacking that pedal with the others or even on its own. Now, for the introduction of Belief in Amsterdam, that was the Shins Music Dumbleoid B, but that was the only drive pedal that John was using. He was using both the drive and boost side of that pedal, and then possibly the Keeley Katana was on for the entire performance. It's really hard to tell from the footage that I've been able to find from that specific show, but you can clearly see that he does activate the Dumbleoid B, or will rather turn it off once all the lights are on, and he launches just into the main part of Belief. So that's just a really cool example of basically John just utilizing that third overdrive pedal on its own to create that lead sound. The version from the Forum would have been the Mesa Boogie Flux 5, and that, I believe, was in combination of some of his other drive pedals like the TS10 Klon Centaur and maybe Mesa Flux 5 to get that lead intro tone. So they're a bit different, and different in terms of what John was actually doing, where Amsterdam was more of one pedal, the Forum was more a combination, but still, it kind of highlights how that third overdrive really sets apart his tone from any other era, and a huge reason as to why I love this specific tour sound the most personally. Now, of course, the Belief intro solos and outro solos, for that matter, are always kind of expected to be some of the loudest and highest in terms of gain that John would use for any given night. But the 2019 World Tour was also different in this aspect, because the third overdrive pedals were utilized for more than just kind of those odd moments here and there, kind of like I've already said. So we're going to go back to the Amsterdam performance, because this is a really incredible performance of Slow Dancing in a Burning Room that very heavily utilizes the Dumbleoid B over the typical combination of TS10 and Klon Centaur for the solo tones. So we're going to take a listen to the first main solo for Slow Dancing in a Burning Room, because this is one where you would pretty much be guaranteed any given night John would stack the Klon Centaur and the TS10 for, and then maybe add something else for the outro solo. But for the main solo, John's using the Shins Music Dumbleoid B. Now, what John is doing here is, to start off the solo, he just activates the Dumbleoid B's boost side, so you'll hear his tones a lot more cleaner but louder. And then there's kind of this moment where it almost sounds like John's kind of lost his place maybe a little bit, because he's just been in the moment in the music, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Then he kind of goes, okay, we're launching into the main actual studio version of the solo to close it off. I better go and get some more gain on, and he'll step on the drive side of the Dumbleoid B and just listen and see what happens. It's pretty funny. So this is one example of how utilizing that third overdrive even catches John a bit off guard. Using the boost side, okay, it's good. He's just in the moment feeling the music, and then he's like, okay, I got to get more gain now because it's closing out. Steps on the drive side of the Dumbleweed B, and there's other footage that exists out there where I can see what he's doing. And you can tell just he wasn't expecting it to be that loud and that, just that almost aggressive sounding. So then he's like, hey, let's go around again, and I'm going to solo for a bit more, and then we'll go back in so that he, can kind of give the audience more of a solo with that sound, but then also come back around and properly finish it out. And of course, the band sounds so great in the fact that they're able to just, on the fly, okay, John, we'll give you some more time and we'll go back around again. And it actually makes for what I think is a really awesome performance. But this is one case where for that main solo for Slow Dancing in a Burning Room, it's just the Dumbleweed. That's all, besides, the Providence delay 80s, you can hear during doing some delay and stuff like that, but it's, for drive pedals, that's all he was using, which is a very unique case for Slow Dancing in a Burning Room. And then just for fun, because this performance of Slow Dancing in a Burning Room, I really do love, and to highlight, just some amazing tones of the 2019 World Tour, let's take a listen to its outro solo. What John does here is he steps on the TS10 first, and then you can actually see he has like a moment where he goes to the clun, and then decides, nah, I'm gonna go back to the Dumbleweed, and I believe what he steps on is the drive side of the Dumbleweed B, so the outro solo should be TS10 and Dumbleweed B for the drives, giving him that tone. So a little bit of a different sound compared to the main, the studio version, the first solo for Slow Dancing in a Burning Room from this performance, but just another really great outro solo with another unique kind of level of tone. And as you guys can see as we're talking here, just the fact that John's added in that third overdrive that he can rely on a lot more heavily, it just gives him that much more variation in what he can do. He can use the Dumbleweed's drive side with some pedals, he can use the boost side with some pedals, just the Dumbleweed B, or it just gives him a lot more combinations and a lot more degrees of, gain and saturation in terms of his tone. Now, it's kind of like the same thing when we think of the Mesa Boogie Flux 5, which is what he used for his third overdrive during the North American leg. And probably my favorite performance of Helpless of all time is at the Forum as well. And the outro solo is just wild. Now, I've never seen footage of what John is stepping on, but just based on kind of my understanding and listening to it enough times, what I believe he's doing is gain stacking the TS TS10 and the Flux 5 all together for this tone in the outro solo, because it is higher gain than you would expect it to be had you just done like TS10 and Clon Centaur, for example. And I think that's also why it's one of my favorite outro solos for Helpless that John has done. It sounds fantastic. Now, of course, the 2019 World Tour wasn't just great because of those higher gain tones courtesy of that third overdrive pedal. The tones that John was getting from his kind of classic gain stacking combination as well were just insane, and I think it kind of varies as well depending on the leg, because the 2019 World Tour had 3 distinct legs: Asia, Oceania, North America, and then Europe, and the setup did evolve a little bit in between each leg. The kind of core sounds stayed the same, but you can kind of hear some distinct differences between the 3 legs, mainly kind of actually because of that third overdrive, where it wasn't really utilized for the first leg. John did have some additional pedals on the board for drives, but they were really, from all the research, all the time I've put into trying to actually find, they were like, I haven't been able to find one single instance of them ever being used. I'm talking about the Zen Drive 2, one of my favorite pedals of all time actually, the Smoky Signal Tubeless Overdrive, and then the Blackstone Appliances MOSFET as well. Those 3 drives were on the board, but they were like basically not used, so you can kind of forget about them, to be honest, in terms of context for John's rig for this part of the tour at least. But this example is I Don't Trust Myself with Loving You in Sydney, and in my opinion, one of the best solos for I Don't Trust Myself with Loving You ever. The tone is unreal, and this would have just been kind of the classic mirror combination, probably the Katana as well, boosting the TS10 and the Clon Centaur, and everything could be set up a little bit differently as well, because John was just primarily relying on those pedals for his kind of maximum outro solo tone. So as he would transition between legs, he probably was able to mellow those other pedals out a little bit, like, you know, decrease the drive maybe on the TS10 or something. I'm just theorizing kind of, because then he had a lot more gain on tap because he could gain stack again. But for this specific part of the tour, he just was relying on his main tone setup for the tones. And yeah, we're gonna take a listen to this. It's just unreal. I don't want to say, I don't want to. So even in terms of a more quintessential John Mayer sound, because those higher gain third overdrive sounds aren't quite that. It's definitely a bit of its own thing in terms of Mayer's sound. But that example, I think, is just a great one of highlighting how even though when you think of John's more quintessential sound, the 2019 World Tour still had some really great highlights in that kind of tonal vein as well. Now, our final example here is going to be another kind of concept that was really, I think, an awesome addition to John's sound for the 2019 World Tour. And I remember when this tour was going on, trying to figure out what John was using, and it was driving me and a bunch of my friends absolutely nuts, because this was a more unique sound than to what we'd ever seen him using, and we knew all the gear, or thought we knew all the gear that he had, and it just didn't make sense. And I'm talking about I Guess I Just Feel Like. This song in particular is just very unique in terms of the tone for John, because Fuzz has always been an effect that you've seen John using a little bit here and there, like during the John Mayer Trio, for example, it was used a bit. And then he did have the full tone octave fuzz as well for some stuff during the Born and Raised in Paradise Valley era. Then, of course, you know, the Pete Cornish NG2, that fuzz for Crossroads was the kind of the big thing that was used for. But they were just kind of, you know, here and there. And Fuzz, you know, kind of fell away a little bit, it felt like, in terms of an effect John would use, but I Guess I Just Feel Like brought it back with the companion psychedelic amplifier machine. It's Shinai is the brand, but Companion's kind of the sub-brand that it was released under. That is basically a FY6 Super Fuzz, is what it is essentially out of this unit. And so that subtle octave that you can hear, especially when John's solo is kind of higher up the neck, is unreal. And then, of course, he would gain stack that with other drive pedals as well to kind of help smooth it out. Like he'd have that on first in the chain, then, you know, add in the Klon or the TS10 or whatever kind of it was to help smooth out the fuzz and give him a bit more volume and power. But the tones from I Guess I Just Feel Like were some of my favorites as well from this tour, just because it was like, okay, fuzz is kind of an effect now a lot of people are talking about, and now when you go back and think of the 2019 World Tour, you think of fuzz because of I Guess I Just Feel Like. And the Milwaukee performance is probably, again, you know, I'm trying to give you guys also my just personal favorite clips that I always go back to and listen to. The Milwaukee one is my personal favorite I Guess I Just Feel Like performance from the 2019 World Tour. So I just thought this would be a fun video because I just find myself going back and listening to all these clips from the 2019 World Tour. And there's a guy on YouTube named Joshi, I'm sorry if I probably pronounced that wrong, but he's done all these big super cuts of, you know, the best of John Mayer 2019 World Tour and stuff like that. And they're just really great performances to go back and listen to just in general. But I find myself going back and listening to them all, and I just thought it'd be a cool video to talk about how, yes, okay, Continuum or like the Born and Raised Paradise Valley tours are probably, you know, if you want to just think of your quintessential Mayer sounds, you know, those are it. And that's kind of, you know, textbook John Mayer guitar tone. But for me, the 2019 World Tour is just, it's my personal favorite. Not necessarily saying it's better or worse than another one, but for me, it's the most unique and the most special. And I will always be kicking myself for not going and seeing John on this tour. It felt like it would be one where I thought that when he did the North American leg, I thought he was going to maybe announce more dates and then I'd go, and then he never did, and I was like, well, that's one I'll always regret not going and seeing, but at least there's great YouTube videos to listen to. So I just wanted to kind of talk about my favorite tour of John's and the guitar tones and highlight them a little bit for you guys in a fun video. So I hope you guys enjoyed as always. Appreciate all the love and support that the channel gets as per usual. Take care, guys. And if there are any other videos, as always, you want me to talk about, let me know in the comments down below. I don't know. Just let me know, and I'll figure something out. But yeah, just a video I've been meaning to make for a while. So until the next one, you guys, take care, and I'll see you soon.